Hello, this is based on a presentation I did for a session about academic libraries. I'll start with a short video of me walking into Mullen Library and to my desk. Gotta scan your ID in order to enter the building. And then I go towards the circulation desk. And my desk is right behind it. I work in the Department of Access Services, and the head of Access Services, we call her Shri, that's the only position where you need to have a master's degree in library science to start. The rest of us are positions in which you need a bachelor's degree, but since Catholic University has a library and information science graduate program, most of us are either current students of that program or recently graduated from it. But there are resource sharing librarians in other libraries. So access services at Mullen Library includes the circulation desk, stacks maintenance. We have 6 floors and a couple 100,000 books and other materials to keep track of in the building. Resource sharing, which I'll explain in a moment. Course reserves, which for those who don't know is faculty can place items at the circulation desk for short-term loans for the students. Building entrances, the Access Services Department is responsible for having people at the entrance to check for IDs, and also there's another entrance that's locked, but as you can see, it's the famous entrance is not helpful for those who can't use stairs, so people who want to use another entrance contact us at the circulation desk and we let them in. And the reference desk I put an asterisk next to because even though it's right next to the circulation desk and we frequently interact with the staff there, the reference desk is supervised by another librarian. And resource sharing, which some people also call interlibrary loan, but actually interlibrary loan is part of it, includes lending and loaning materials to other libraries. Consortium loaning and borrowing. A consortium is a group of libraries, either by area or type, and they have a formal agreement to share materials with each other. Document delivery is when you request an article that the library doesn't have, and we ask another library for it, and it's sent to you electronically to your library account. Usually online means there are certain countries with stricter copyright rules, so in that case we have the article mailed to us. Items at offsite storage. There is a storage facility that Mullen Library uses in Maryland. We have a couple 100,000 items there, and we frequently are in contact with staff there to either deliver items to our library or for them to scan pages of materials for us. Remote and distance patrons. Anyone who lives at least 25 miles away from campus can ask our department to mail materials to them. University theses and dissertations. A couple times a month, someone asks for a copy of a dissertation from as recently as last year to back in the 100 years ago, and we have to determine if we can supply a copy to them. And assisting non-university patrons. For example, before the pandemic, there was a gentleman from Arlington, Virginia, who wanted to look at a couple books that our library owns, but it's located at the storage facility. So I asked the storage facility to send it to our library so he can view it in the library since he couldn't check it out. Here are examples of web pages and software I regularly use to take care of resource sharing requests. There's on the left is the Iliad software that we use to track all of our ILL requests. I use the library catalog a couple dozen times a day to verify that we have something. ProQuest Dissertations and Theses Global, if one of Catholic University's dissertations is available at that database, we are not allowed to loan it through interlibrary loan because we have a contract with ProQuest that they digitize it for us, and therefore they have the right to make reproductions. Google Scholar we often use to verify citations. If we are missing page numbers or not sure about the year, we can get a more accurate citation before we submit any request to another library. And of course, OCLC's World Catalog, which is helpful every day. Here are some resource sharing statistics I've collected over the past month to give you an idea of how many we get. For requests from our patrons requesting items from other places, it was a total of 659. 424 were scans of pages of a book or articles. 235 of them were loans that they are waiting for them to arrive from another library by mail. Requests that we get from other libraries, 309. Probably due to the pandemic, the overwhelming majority of them were article requests and only 15 loans. The number of items either we scanned for our patrons or WRLC storage staff scanned for us was 214. In terms of our books being requested through the catalog, that was over 700. And we had to check them out to the patron and put them in a bag so they were ready to carry out when they came to the entrance by appointment. And also, these a lot of the same patrons requested over 300 books from nearby university libraries that were delivered to us by courier. So the total, not including the scans we did because those were associated with the borrowing requests, was 1,778, and that adds up to about 89 requests per workday. And each of these requests takes a few minutes to start and complete. Library consortia. The largest consortium Mullen Library is associated with is the Washington Research Library Consortium, and it's about 9 or 10 university libraries in the DC area, and there's a courier route daily that starts at the storage facility in Maryland, and the couriers or drivers have to take hundreds of books and visit over a dozen locations in DC and a couple in Northern Virginia throughout the day. And then when they're done, they have to drive halfway around the Beltway back to the storage facility. It's a lot of work. I wouldn't do well at it at all. But one of the couriers featured in the photo is Mr. Dean. He visits us every morning, and if it weren't for people like him, a consortium like this just wouldn't work well. What are the advantages of a consortium to traditional interlibrary loan? So instead of waiting a week or two for an item to arrive by mail, the courier helps us provide books within a couple days. Once someone requests an item through the catalog, then we're able to acquire it more quickly. All the libraries share the same storage facility, and we also share the same journals to avoid duplication and save space in the storage facility. All the libraries in the consortium use the same service as a software or integrated library system. In the case of WRLC, we currently use Ex Libris's Alma. So when we get a book from Georgetown University, for instance, we're able to check it into our circulation system almost as easily as our own book. And also within the consortium of about 15 million items, the patrons can keep the item longer, checked out, and also renew it through their My Library account a couple times. The other consortium that Mullen Library is associated with is the Washington Theological Consortium. There are about 12 libraries in the area. This consortium, it doesn't involve a courier, but in normal times, patrons from those organizations can enter Mullen Library, go through the general stacks, and check out a certain number of books for a few weeks. But since we're in the middle of a pandemic and only Catholic University patrons are allowed in the library by appointment, we're currently offering our books to these other consortium libraries via interlibrary loan, and we waive the usual fee of $10 for a loan. Although sometimes this consortium is restricted to only theology students. Part of that may be because one of the libraries is across the street from the Catholic University campus, and they don't want other students thinking, oh, they can use the study rooms and the carrels in that library to study for hours at a time, to protect the smaller libraries from being overwhelmed by patrons of larger libraries. So this is a brief checklist of what we do when we get a request from another library. First, do we have the exact item they're requesting? Sometimes they'll ask for a book and they want a more recent version than what we have. Or we might subscribe to the journal, but we don't have access to the exact article from that volume or issue the article's in. If we have the exact item, can we provide it? Maybe that copy is checked out. Maybe it's a legal issue in which we have a contract with the publisher that we cannot share it with other libraries. Can we provide it on time? Sometimes we have law firms, people from law firms calling saying they want to check out a book that they see in the catalog and they're going to come over in the afternoon and pick it up, but we have too many other requests and it's not fair for them to jump in line when all the other libraries have submitted their requests through the ILL system. How is the library going to pay for it? We charge $10 for a loan, $10 for an article, more if it's going to be an international loan. And some libraries, like public libraries or some government libraries, they don't have it in their ILL system to pay for things through like Iliad, for instance. So we conditionalize the request explaining that we can provide this if you're willing to pay the $10 fee. And if not, then they just need to try and get it from another library. Does it have any missing or confusing information, such as we see they have the wrong page numbers, or it's just something in the citation just doesn't look right. So sometimes we can ask for clarification before we try and look for it. And articles and book chapters that we supply electronically, that's called document delivery. And the physical items like books, sometimes music CDs, we mail them to other libraries. And when we get a request from one of our patrons for something from another library, we once again, do we have the item in the first place? It's easy to sometimes miss things in our complicated catalog, but sometimes there's a good reason to request something anyway. our copy might be checked out by another patron. So we can simply ask another library for their copy for a few weeks. Or it's an item that we have it, but it's not an item that you can check out, such as we sometimes have people who would like to check out a book that's on the third floor in the religious studies room. Those books never leave the library, but perhaps there's a library that does have the same book that they do let it circulate. So then they can have their own copy for a few weeks to use. In order to find what one of our patrons wants, we use the unique International Standard Book Number to find books, or International Standard Serial Number, 8 digits to find the exact journal. If neither of those are available, we see if there's a OCLC number in WorldCat, and if we're, again, just like the other side, if we need clarification, we can contact the patron to see if, for instance, they request a book that some libraries provide have the Italian version, other libraries have the Latin version, and we'll ask, do you have a preference on which language it's in? How much will it cost? Mullen Library, we're allowed to pay up to $25 from a library to borrow material. But if a library charges more for something, say $50, we will ask the patron, no matter who it is, faculty, freshman, if they're willing to pay the difference and have it added as an extra fee on their library account. And if they say sure, then we'll wait until the item arrives to add it to their library account. If they're not interested, then we'll say we canceled it at the request of the patron. And for people who request articles and book chapters, those are faster because they can be sent electronically most of the time. Sometimes we receive them the same day. Other times it takes several days, depending on how many libraries have it and are able to provide it, and also the time of year too. In December, not a good time to do interlibrary loan because most academic libraries are winding down the semester and closing for winter break. Mailed items, there are people who we let them know that we have the electronic book, the version they want in electronic book, but some are like, I'd like just the actual print version. And we'll say, okay, we'll request it, but keep in mind it will take a couple weeks to arrive. So the impact of COVID-19 on the library. It's restricted access to the library for patrons. We normally have about 1,000 visitors a day into the building. These days we have about a handful, and that's because it's by appointment only that people can study in the library for 2 hours in a particular space. During the spring, in late March, April, May, because the governor of Maryland excluded non-essential workers from their workplaces, the WRLC staff was not allowed to work in the building. And so the dozen or 20 or so requests we normally sent to them to scan this, to please send us that just wasn't possible for several weeks. And sometimes we were able to ask other libraries for something, but most libraries were in the same situation as us. There are now fewer student employees throughout the building. Last year we had up to 55 students working in various departments of the library. Now there are just a handful, but we have just as much work to do, at least in the Access Services Department. The mail service. It took us months to figure out whether we can return books to libraries. We weren't sure if they were open and accepting returns. And of course, all the troubles that the U.S. Postal Service has had this past year due to political reasons and the election coming up, and then COVID as well. That's meant things that normally took 1 or 2 weeks are taking longer to arrive or return. Please, we tell the staff, remind them, don't touch recently returned items. The Realm project with OCLC and a couple of other institutions, they have scientific tests done to see how long coronavirus can last on a book or materials such as plastic covers of DVDs. And as a result, when we retrieve books from the outdoor book drop, which is the only place that we want people to return books, is someone with gloves and a mask takes the books out of the book drop, puts them on a book cart, and we just leave the cart alone for a couple days, because the scientific results determine that usually after 72 hours, there's almost no trace of it. And we have an increased demand from distance patrons because, of course, since they can't come into the library, they ask us to mail the material instead, or electronically if we can. Book chapter scan requests from items in the library as well as the storage facility, they have quadrupled in number since the pandemic started. And though our work schedule has changed, I normally worked evenings until the circulation desk closed at 11 p.m. 5 days a week. I would also work one weekend day a week, but now we don't have the staff to keep the library open on weekends. And I work half the day at home and half the day in the library. My direct colleague who sits the desk next to me, he does the reverse so that we're not there at the same time, because we can do some stuff online, but with all these physical items and also the student employees who need guidance, someone's got to be there to take care of a lot of the things. So what type of person, like a student of library science, would enjoy doing this? I noticed when I took library science classes and we were doing practice on reference desk questions, is at the reference desk, usually a patron comes up with a general question and would like the librarian to find, narrow it down to a couple of good articles or books or other sources on that subject. While in interlibrary loan, where the person already knows exactly what they want, it's our job to find it and make it available to them. It's very deadline oriented because we do have dozens of requests a day. They have to be fulfilled in a certain amount of time. One former student employee said this almost feels like a newsroom at times. And as someone who's worked in a newsroom, yeah, I can understand that feeling. And you'd like to be someone who likes to regularly communicate with many types of people all day, especially when we're not in a pandemic, because as you saw, my desk is not in a sealed off office. I'm right behind the circulation desk, so I can hear everything. Sometimes that's good, because if a patron has a problem with one of the requests, I can look at it right away and solve it while the patron is standing there. But on the other hand, if I am interrupted many times during the day, and if I'm trying to concentrate on a complicated request, it takes a while for me to refocus. And what's the value of resource sharing to an academic library? Well, it saves money. I mean, think of how much would it cost to buy all these items that we borrow every year. The only exception is commonly used items. It's best to just like those rent-to-own furniture stores, it will cost much less to just buy the item somewhere instead of paying extra and renting and then eventually buying. Also for online things like articles. If the Copyright Clearance Center notices that we're requesting articles from the same journal over and over, then the copyright fees will skyrocket, hinting to us, if you keep requesting for this, maybe it's a sign that you should actually subscribe to this journal instead. And with shrinking library budgets in most libraries, that will mean increased demand for materials elsewhere. So for those wondering what the future will look like, will the job that you see now, will it exist in the future? Yeah, I think resource sharing will continue to exist and become more intricate, um, but they also have to follow laws and regulations such as copyright and contracts. But people are thinking of clever solutions to some of these problems we've had, especially during the pandemic. And I'm constantly interacting with librarians at other libraries, so it increases awareness of what Catholic University's Mullen Library has to offer. And finally, I'll provide a list of links of where you can find more information about resource sharing. Thank you for listening.